Hope you enjoyed your lunch. My name is Arun Iyer, and this is my colleague Sajal.
Good afternoon, one.
We are part of the team building the analytics platform at UiPath. Let's take a look at what you can get from this session. The appropriate audience for this session would be RPA developers, the line of business process owners, for example, say a director of procurement or someone in the HR or the finance department, IT operations managers who handle the hardware and software requirements for your RPA deployment, the RPA Center of Excellence leaders, data scientists, business analysts, and solution architects. By the end of this session, you should be able to get some idea and insight about the key personas and their analytics needs when it comes to the RPA deployments and the metrics and monitoring requirements. The major capabilities of the UiPath Analytics platform, be able to set up a workflow to leverage UiPath Analytics and connect that workflow to the analytics data store, the data engine which actually stores all the data and provides the insights. Then be able to use those insights and create dashboards to visualize metric computation. So today, when a customer has an RPA deployment and needs to monitor it and get analytics insights from it, what is their typical need? They need to monitor KPIs of RPA deployment. For example, what is the robo utilization? How long are the robos actually spent executing a process that has been automated? What is the process throughput? How many process executions and job executions are happening per hour, per day, per week? And how many errors or exceptions are being faced while doing this? For a senior executive persona, they would want to optimize their ROI. So there's a certain investment in the RPA deployment. How can they optimize their ROI and improve their business outcomes? Things like definitely monetary terms, man hours saved, reduction in errors, and commitment to meet SLAs. Then correlate operational and business insights. So operations is running and trying to take care of the day-to-day activities, and business looks at business metrics, revenue, profitability, so on. How can you bring these two together in the context of RPA? And be notified of unexpected situations. Things don't go as expected. Some robos run into an error. Some paper might not be processed the way you expected.
Or high volumes.
Or high volume. And can we get detailed information on KPIs and address issues that we get from the insights from those KPIs? Today, UiPath has an offering that includes Elasticsearch and Kibana to provide a basic framework for monitoring and analytics. Show of hands, how many people here have used this? Right. So, what is the common feedback, or what are the common challenges that you face when you use this combination of Elasticsearch and Kibana? Do any of these statements resonate with you? It's a little difficult to configure and to use. It's not very easy for line of business users to get started immediately and start using it. It assumes a little bit of technical knowledge at least. No out-of-box insights to get going right from the word go. There needs quite a bit of configuration and being able to set up dashboards and so on before you can even start getting any insights on these analytics. And it's hard to correlate business and operational insights. You need to separately get the business insights, operational insights, figure out how they map to each other. There may be mistakes, there may be misalignment in these. And the need to install and maintain third-party products. Both Elasticsearch and Kibana are not products from the UiPath ecosystem. So the need to maintain and install them separately on your deployment stack. So this is where we step in with the UiPath Analytics platform. Out of box, right from the word go, you get a set of rich insights which help you monitor your deployment. So you get insights on robo intelligence, process intelligence to monitor your key operational and RPA health metrics. Are your robos performing well? Are your processes being automated correctly? Are they facing any exceptions? And so on. You can graphically correlate operational and business insights. For example, if you have business insights which talk about volume or which talk about the amount of expenses being processed, and you have operational insights like the uptime of the robots, the exceptions faced by each process execution. You can correlate them. Ease of use, it's simple to easy and maintain, and it comes with the UiPath support. Alerting, as mentioned, things do go wrong, and when they go wrong, you would want to know, you would want to get an alert or a notification saying, hey, this exception, unknown condition has occurred. Would you want to take a further look in? Drill down into KPIs. So once you know that there is an exception or there is something that you need to dig further into, can you drill down and see granular information about exactly what robots were doing, which step suffered a problem, did something time out and take too much time, and so on and so forth. You can drill down to get granular insights to be able to address issues and do a root cause analysis. Then you can leverage predictive analysis. So by looking at historical trends, can we try to predict what could go wrong given the knowledge about the current situation, about the workload of our processes, about the design of our processes, and so
Right.
on.
Not only that, based on the predictive data or the historical data, operationally you can be in a better position to meet up a certain challenge. So, for example, if you have during a certain period of time in historically, you have higher volumes of data. So, predictably, you can predict that during this period, this is the peak volume that you would be hitting, and for that peak volume, this is the optimum number of robots that you would be needing to continue to meet your turnaround times.
So let's take a look at the major capabilities of the UiPath Analytics platform. So the UiPath Analytics platform lets you connect to and ingest data from your orchestrator logs, rich data, and be able to analyze them to get the key pieces of information. It lets you tabulate this information and connect to other BI tools like Tableau and Power BI, which some might already be using. It allows you to define custom entity tables to be able to store this data in a structured manner and define metrics or computations based out of these entity tables, create dashboards and visualizations from them, and to monitor these in real time. Then set up alerts, as mentioned, to monitor, to be notified in case of anomalous situations, leverage predictive analytics. Also, for our partners, you can build custom point solutions,
Yep.
and using the new UiPath Go marketplace, you can distribute them to a wide range of customers and deploy your custom solutions on the UiPath Analytics platform to these customers. Let's take a look at the key personas and how they use these capabilities of the platform. So the first is the process owner, who is probably, as I said, a business persona, say someone like a director of procurement. This persona has the process reporting to him and oversees all processes and outcomes in a business function, and they would typically use process insights and alerting to know when things go wrong. The IT operations manager configures and maintains the IT infrastructure. So, is the network up? Are the robo processes running properly? Are there any anomalous situations happening with the hardware of the software? They primarily use system intelligence, robo intelligence, alerting, and the automated RCA to know whether something went wrong due to environmental factors or due to something with the RPA deployment. Then the data scientists and the analysts are those who work with the raw data to be able to mine it to get rich insights and to be able to get deep correlations, to be able to get root cause analysis or further trends from the data that is being stored in the UiPath Analytics platform data store. Some example use cases are where you would see side by side maybe a business metric, right, like a breakup of invoice value by department and by supplier. And beside that, you would want to see an operational metric, for example, process exceptions by robos. So you have 4 or 5 automated robos running, and they are processing some processes. How many of them actually hit an exception? So let's get down to the nitty-gritties. How do you actually build a dashboard like this step by step? Essentially, this is broken up into 3 phases, each represented by a certain persona. It starts with the RPA developer when they are defining the workflow to automate a certain process. So while they are defining a workflow, they can mark certain variables as important for analytics and say, please send these variables to the analytics engine. Then once they mark them, they actually write these variables into a log statement, and the analytics engine after that takes over, picks them up, and starts processing them. However, so this is the workflow running with every execution and outputting data. There needs to be someone to be able to actually ingest it. This is where the second persona comes in, who is an analytics architect, someone like, say, a solution architect. They define the schema of the tables which will contain this data in the analytics platform big data store. So what would be a table with some business metrics, with some business variables? What would be a table with some operational variables? And then they map these two together. How does the workflow that is being generated by the RPA developer map to this table that has been now created in the analytics platform data store?
Right.
And the last is the business data analyst, who now uses the data flowing into the analytics data store to be able to define computations and metrics. So all of us know that metrics can be notoriously hard to define. Something as simple as, say, burn. So maybe someone's doing some deep discounting. So what is the average cash burn per week? So does it include things like discounts? Does it include things like returns? So being able to precisely define a metric with all the filter conditions and all the time conditions integrated into the definition of the metric, and then visualizing it on a dashboard using an appropriate visualization. This is typically the task of a business data analyst. Now, let's look at a live demo. And we will go through the steps of adding variables to the workflow, creating an entity table in the analytics platform, mapping a process to the entity table, defining a metric out of the mapped process, and adding a chart to a dashboard to be able to view that metric. So let's take a look. This is an example screenshot of what a dashboard would look like. Let's go through how to build one of these step by step. So we start with the workflow.
Yeah, the first challenges of RPA development. Upgrades are always there.
Yes, random pop-ups which were unexpected. This was definitely not supposed to be part of the demo. Right. So we have a workflow defined by the RPA developer where this is an example workflow of expense report processing. So the employees are filing expense reports. How do you extract key variables like the expense date, expense amount, expense report ID, department, expense type, maybe a vendor, all these key variables, and extract them from a workflow and then send them to the analytics data pipeline. So this is where the variables are being defined. Currently, yes, they're being read from a queue. And then we use the add log fields out of box activity to say that we would want to add these log fields, add these selected variables to any log, and then those would be ingested by the analytics data platform. So if you check, we have all these we have all the variables that are processed by the RPA workflow here. They are mapped to certain differently named variables in the log. I just use the term log underscore to determine that they are in a log, and then just write these logs to the orchestrator log. Are all of you familiar with this concept of being able to take variables, writing them to an orchestrator, adding them to the log fields, and sending them to the orchestrator log?
One of the key construct over here is that you would notice that we are not doing anything differently specific for analytics. We are doing the standard logging. We are not logging for analytics. We are logging for process execution.
Right. So this goes into the standard RPA logs that are also in the SQL server. So post this, the solution architect can now come to the analytics platform, and now we will go through the steps of defining an entity, creating a mapping, and then defining metrics and dashboards on that. So first, let's go to entity. An entity is nothing but a table. So let's create a new table. We can give it a name saying, say, my sample table, and an optional description, and name some of the fields. So I say I have something like entity, or rather report ID, which is going to be a string. I can add another one and say expense amount, which would be a long, that's a different data type, and so on. I can add all the variables that I had actually generated in the workflow. I have already done this prior to the demo, so I'm going to cancel this step for now.
Basically, what the solution architect would be doing is based on the correlation design that the solution architect wants to focus on. He would create the structure of the entity. It can have business fields. It can have system-defined fields for process and robots. It can have multiple different fields based on which the entire the matrix definition and the correlation story would be coming together.
Great. Now we'll move on to defining a mapping. A mapping, if you recall, is the handshake between each execution of the workflow and the entity that we just defined in the data store. So I have some sample processes running. Say I just choose a sample process and one of the entities that I had defined earlier, and you can see a list of fields that are read from the log and what they would map to in the table that was just defined in the analytics data store. So I can pick maybe amount, and then I can map that to expense amount. I can pick, I don't know, maybe expense type, and map that to expense type, and so on. Maybe, yeah, department, and map that to department, and so on. So this is where the handshake is set up between the execution of the automated process and the data store in the analytics platform, right?
So this is what tells the analytics agent how to parse the log that is getting generated during the process execution and how to map it to the entity that we have defined as part of our entity definition process.
Once this step has been completed, the analytics data platform automatically ingests data every time a workflow is run and populates this table. So now the business analyst can come define a metric and then define a visualization that they can keep on put on a dashboard. Let's take a look at how to define a metric. A metric is, as I mentioned, nothing but a computation. So let's create a new metric and call it example expense amount metric. I'm going to choose the table that we just created. I can add any filter conditions. For example, I can say department name or expense type is only equal to something or the other. But I'm not going to do that for now. We can mention an aggregate definition. So say sum of expense amount grouped by expense type and department, right? And then I hit save, and yes, a new metric has been created. Then let's go put this on a dashboard. I'll create a new dashboard saying sample expense dashboard. We can choose a layout in which to arrange the charts that we have. I'm going to choose, say, a nice layout like this. I choose a color theme, so I'll choose a nice colorful theme and go ahead. So we get a new blank dashboard with space for charts, blank spaces for charts. Let's add one of the charts from the metrics that we just created. I'm going to say expenses, department type, and say we choose a visualization. Let's pick the metric that we just defined. It automatically says that this was defined on the sum of expense amount, and the dimensions could be selected from the group by fields that we had defined while making the metric. Then we hit save to see the data getting populated and being refreshed in real time. This is the data over the last 6 hours. As you can see by the time selected at the top, you can select a different time range, for example, the last 12 hours, 1 day, 15 days, month, or define a custom range from a certain date to a certain date. So if I look at the last 12 hours, for example, you see the data refresh in real time. Right? And that brings us to the end of the demo. Can we please switch back to the presentation for a few closing comments? Yes, it is live and in real time. So yes, as this is a quote attributed to Peter Drucker, but I'm not sure whether he actually said it. So what gets measured gets managed, and that is why analytics is very core to any RPA deployment to ensure that processes are running smoothly and the customers get the best ROI and the smoothest possible operations from their RPA deployment. With that, I thank you for attending this session, and we'll be open to take any queries, comments, or thoughts. Yes, please. So it is still under development. It is in the roadmap. For any further information on that, you can contact us or uh, the partner support team who will be able to guide you through any early preview kind of possibilities that can exist.
What what advantage does it bring from Kibana Elasticsearch versus what you are developing or what you are showing?
Very good question, and we have a slide on that next.
I'm taking about like the technical part of it, but the aspect which it brings on.
Can we please switch to the slideshow? Yes. So yes, we try to do a comparative analytics of Elasticsearch and Kibana. Elasticsearch and Kibana is like using a jackhammer to say crack open a walnut, right? Uh, you have an RPA deployment and some very basic, very essential analytics and monitoring needs that come along with that deployment. Elasticsearch and Kibana is not tuned to RPA. It's a very generic tool, which consequently makes it hard to configure, hard to maintain and deploy, and slightly harder to use for line of business users. It's also, as we mentioned earlier, not packaged along with the UiPath ecosystem. So these are some of the advantages that would be addressed by the UiPath analytics.
When we talk about analytics, there are two aspects to it. When you talk about analytics in conjunction with RPA, one is the RPA analytics, what is happening in real time, what a RPA COE would be interested in, like how the process executions are happening, how the robots utilization is taking place. But as an operations manager or as a business leader, I do not want to know, or I might not want to know what is process execution, what is robot execution. I would like to know the ROI story of it. If I'm investing X amount of dollars in RPA initiation, I want to understand for all the processes that have been executed by that RPA initiation, what is the benefit I'm getting. So that is an operational and business specific view that we are striving for. So as Arun mentioned earlier, what we are trying to achieve is a correlation between RP execution, operational analytics, and business analytics, which is not very easily possible with Elasticsearch and Kibana. I mean, as a software industry, we cannot say that something is not entirely possible. It is possible, but what is the ROI on that? What is the optimization on that? What is the usability on that? That is where our platform comes into play.
You would probably need a separate team to just maintain the Elasticsearch and Kibana kind of tools. So that at a very broad, crude level, so that would be the difference. Any further questions? Thoughts, comments? Yes. Correct.
This needs to be installed on in the orchestrator VDI, or is it to be installed on a separate machine?
Right. So the question is from an infrastructure point of view, how does it fit in with the rest of the
Current
UI
deployments.
path,
Exactly,
with the deployments? Is it bundled along with the orchestrator, or does it need a separate deployment? The offering itself is not part of the orchestrator; it's an add-on offering. The details of rollout and what kind of infrastructure would be needed to support it are still a work in progress, and we will be able to share further details later.
But the idea is we want to make it as smooth as possible for our current customers who are already using Elasticsearch and Kibana, who already have a RPA deployment. So we want to make that the adaptability as smooth as possible. And even for new customers also who are setting their RPA shop, this needs to be done in a manner that makes it very conducive for them for easy deployments.
Because as far as I can see, this analysis tool is working on based on the database developed by the orchestrator. So
That is one of the data sources.
yeah, one of the data sources exactly. So it depends upon the developer what is the data he needs to log.
That is decided by
Yeah,
the
yeah.
RPA workflow developer
Yeah.
as well as the
Business
business
test
analyst,
case.
as well as
Yeah.
the line of business owner, right? The
Right.
process owner who says, these are the numbers that I'm interested in. The business analyst then tells the RPA developer that these are the columns that are required to compute this number, and then the RPA developer adds those fields into their workflow.
So
For example,
as it is the case, so the database should be on the same machine. So the analysis should be on the same machine as well, so that it has the access to it.
Not at all. This is a distributed system. It's hardware independent. So you can have the database on a different machine, orchestrator on a different machine, logs on a different
Right.
machine, the UI and the backend on separate machines.
Okay.
So for example, if I want to have a view of the ROI on my RPA process based on the number of P1s that has been logged for that process execution, right? So I need to have, as part of my implementation design, I need to log department. So for example, if I want department-wise distribution, so I need to log the department information as part of my logging, and then I should be able to maybe say ingest information from a ticket management system on which say the tickets are getting logged and correlate them. So the data store can be anything.
Okay.
The data store can reside on different infrastructures, but as a platform, I should be able to get that data, ingest that, and drive the correlation.
We have a quick question from gentleman.
Yeah.
My question was, I understand both the operation side as well as the business side. Though I just want to add a comment more than a question. The teams will have to work together.
Right.
And I think the direction is your business teams, there are two types I'm thinking. One is looking at the process itself, number of invoices or claims you process every month, what's the average, etc., etc. And then you're looking at the robot efficiency and exceptions and so forth. There are two sides to it.
Correct.
I think the flow has to start with the consumers of the analytics. Then once you decide what kind of dashboards do I want, then the developers take over, and then your UiPath architect takes over.
Right.
Therefore, the flow I'm thinking should start from the end consumer and then drive it inwards.
Yeah, you are.
The flow of definition starts, as you said, from the say senior persona who defines that these are the business metrics that I want.
That's right.
And then come to the IT operational metrics, as you mentioned, and once they are implemented, they flow back up the other way. So you start gathering data at a granular level,
Exactly.
derive the IT operational metrics, and then derive the
To fulfill the
business
need
metrics.
that was stated initially.
Right. So generally what happens in during the process definition phase or the process discovery phase, an operational quality analyst is always there in the picture who defines how the current human process is going to be mapped to the RPA process implementation and what are the current data requirements that the human operation fulfills and needs to be juxtaposed to the RPA implementation. So it actually starts from top down, right? So so with that definition and the SOPs in place, this is how the flow would actually work.
Very quickly, we have just about a minute left. How many of you would find this sort of a solution useful and would be able to take it to your teams, to your partners and customers? Okay, that's great. Quite an encouraging response there.
So just a last question. So
Sorry. Yes.
just a last question. I think you already covered, and I do understand like it works more on RDBMS and SQL Server, and we are doing a lot of like audit logs and data.
So
So
let me stop you right there. It's actually a big data platform. It's not a SQL.
okay, so it can take like NoSQL and
Yes.
Document DB, Cosmos DB, and all
Yeah.
of that.
Thank you. We are nearly
As a
out of
data
time. For any further questions, comments, clarifications, please do meet us in the foyer. And thank you very much for attending.
Thanks for your time.